Celia Smith began her very eclectic career with an undergraduate degree in English, as one does. And then she did an MBA. And since then, she has moved into a variety of roles, all in support, in one way or another, in support of the arts. And so I'm going to let her talk about the various activities she's been involved in. I doubt, in fact, that you'll have a chance to mention all the organizations. You were very involved with Canadian Stage and with Opera Atelier. So if those are your faves, you could direct her in that direction during the question period, perhaps. Meanwhile, I hope you'll join me in welcoming Ms. Smith to speak with us today.
Thank you, Susan. So if you can't hear me, you have to tell me. And if you on Zoom are only getting like my chest, you have to tell me, okay? I don't want to know about it later on the recording. Okay, Margaret, you're in charge. All right. I've also got the forehead. Now can you see it? Is the microphone in the way? No, you're good. You guys can still hear me? Okay, monitor it, Margaret. Okay, tell me if I can't. Okay, we're good. Thank you, Susan. Where are you? Where'd you go? Thank you very much. Nice to meet you, Daphne. Really nice to meet all of you. I'm not an alumni of U of T, but I do have some family connections, so don't throw me out. My son is doing his PhD right now in astrophysics over the way. Yay! And he's going to finish this summer. And my daughter-in-law, yes, is doing her PhD in medical biophysics, studying at U of T and Sick Kids Hospital. She's got a couple more years, applied science. It just takes longer. So I did a calculus course one summer at U of T, but that's as far as I ever got into your classroom. So sorry about that. I'm here to talk to you, as Susan said, about Toronto, about the arts sector. I see it as actually the larger picture of the city. You'll figure that out when you start hearing me talk about things. And what I currently do is lead Luminato Festival Toronto, which is what this lovely picture is that you can see on the screen. And I'm going to get to that. But I thought, and now I can't move the screen because it's gone to sleep.
So we have to go down here. Do that first time.
There we go.
Should work.
Great. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of my background. You're all August professors emeritus, so I thought I better give some credentials to start. So I'll do that. I want to do sort of a case study about Artscape, which was an organization that I co-led for many years, which was really building a different approach to arts and culture in a city that was undergoing rapid change and just went into bankruptcy. So there's sort of a sad story. I want to talk about what we're trying to do at Luminato, which is all future potential, in my opinion. And I'll close out with talking about what you can do this week if you want to see some things in arts and culture, but more generally, my philosophy about what we could all do if we want to live in a city that is interesting and dynamic and affordable and attractive. And we all have a part to play in that. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I think I have about 45 minutes. Is that about right? And then I hope we have a conversation. And those of you online, I hope that you can send in your questions so that we can have a chat. So when they say that I've been doing this for 25 plus years, that's just a polite way of saying that I'm now old. It's actually been a little bit more than 25 years. I did do an MBA. I graduated. I didn't want to work in a bank or Procter & Gamble. I thought, oh my God, what did I do an MBA for? Oh no. And I've almost always worked in the arts and almost always led things. So I started off at the McMichael Canadian Art Collection, in Kleinburg, and worked there for a couple of years until I thought, oh my God, I'm wasting my mid-20s living in Woodbridge. I've got to get to the big smoke. So I gave up on McMichael, which is a beautiful gallery, and went to work for Canadian Stage. And I worked there for many years, leading marketing and development, worked with a great team of producers. We commissioned and developed hundreds of new Canadian plays that we produced and played across the country and that we toured around the world. We also did a lot of work from elsewhere and brought it in. And this was in the 90s, in the face of pretty constricting provincial funding and all kinds of other forces against us, we really also flourished during that time. I don't know if you lived in the city at the time, but Mirvish was going nuts with their shows. Drabinsky, before they caught him, was going nuts with his shows. There were shows on every street corner. There were 7 big musicals playing every night. And I remember people saying, oh my God, isn't it competitive? I'm like, no, it means people have got used to paying $100 for a ticket and going out. So I just saw all of that as a really vibrant place to be, where we could contribute what we were doing more on the Canadian side of theater in a context of a city of people who I always thought on the bottom of their resume, they would say one of their interests was going out to shows as opposed to lying on the couch, which I'll come back to 25 years later, because there's a lot of couch lying going on right now. And I think we have to get back to being a city that we go out and participate in. So I did that for a long time. I had kids, I did contract work, I went back to full-time. I worked at Opera Atelier, I worked at the opera company, I worked at the symphony and others. And everywhere I thought I would sell strategic thinking and long-term planning and larger solutions. And everywhere I went, they just needed me to fill in for their fundraising person who had run screaming from the building, or their ticketing person who said, oh my God, how am I going to sell all these tickets? And everybody was very short-term thinking. And it wasn't that they weren't well-intentioned and that they weren't smart people. It's just very hard to be strategic when you're kind of in a snowstorm of challenges in the not-for-profit arts world. So I was just always really sympathetic, whether it's a large organization or a small one. The situation is almost the same. The zeros are just different, you know? After a while, I got sick of selling tickets and trying to run plays. And I looked around and I took a role at Artscape. This was in 2008, and just before the global financial crisis. So we didn't know that was on the horizon. We were like, la, 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 great time to go run a nonprofit property developer, trying to address affordable housing for artists and their families and make space for creativity in a city that was going nuts with development. All of the development along Queen West, eventually along Dundas West, downtown along the waterfront, and the places that artists had made interesting for all of us with their jazz clubs and their beautiful galleries and their squat housing and warehouses, and the kind of city that was really fun for all the rest of us to live in, were being literally booted out. And the arts sector generally isn't an owner in real estate. It's generally, a erstwhile tenant, and so just kept being pushed out. So Artscape had been established a few decades earlier, but was really trying to address this. So I joined just a couple of weeks before the Witchwood Barns opened, which, if any of you live in the St. Clair Christie area, you know how fabulous that building is. And a few weeks after I joined, there was a global financial meltdown. So I quickly learned about financing and foreclosures and banks and, all of that stuff. I'm going to get into a little bit more about Artscape because I think it's an interesting case study about how a city tries to preserve its integrity and its jazz, and the challenges inherent in that. I did that for 8 years. I developed 11 projects with the team around the city. Lots to learn about all of that, which I'll get into. I then went and ran a private development company with a friend who had been on the board of Artscape, and we were trying to do at scale in a commercial model what we had been doing in the non-for-profit model at Artscape. So how do you actually do development, mixed use, residential, commercial development with investment partners who are only interested in the bottom line? How do you do that and include affordable housing alongside market housing, atelier, interesting space alongside commercial space, sustainability, like real sustainability, aesthetic, God forbid, we build beautiful buildings, public realm in the midst of private ownership? How do you do all of that with the pressure of a bottom line? The project, I was there for 3 years. I was the chief operating officer. It was a $1.5 billion assets under management. So it was a lot. And the projects will take 10 to 15 years. So I'll be back in 10 years and I'll tell you how they did on that. And it's easy to lose some of those beautiful ideas as you modify and try to hold on to the financial objectives. But the philosophy was, how do you actually use a commercial model to achieve social good? And is there a way to de-risk a large complex project by actually addressing the issues that we're all looking to be addressed? So if you did include affordability alongside commercial, could you get your development permits more easily, more quickly? Could you go into neighborhoods where neighbors actually welcomed you as opposed to resisted you? And in so doing, do you actually reduce the length of time to actually bring your project to market? So I think it's a very, I'll come back to this. I'm interested in how not-for-profit social objectives could be included in the commercial agenda. And with the correct incentives from public policy, we might actually address the vortex that we're all going down in the middle, whether that's equity or affordability or sustainability or livability or resilience or whatever the issues are. So that's what's on my mind. Now I'm running Luminato. So I will get into Luminato, but Luminato is an international multidisciplinary arts festival, firmly rooted in Toronto, but welcoming the world. So given my background that I just said to you, quickly, I'm interested in using this. My agenda is to actually build a better city, make it a city that we actually reflects who we are and who we all could be, makes us leave our neighborhoods and go to other neighborhoods and connect with people that might not be in our circles, that we might not know about, expand our minds to other things. And in so doing, give us some energy and some confidence to deal with the major issues that are on the table. And I think arts and culture can do that. And a festival, which is at large scale and can be overwhelming, I think could be like a big piece of social acupuncture to then, when they really do it well and you go, it hurts. And then you feel the reverberations of the acupuncture for some time and it changes how you feel. So loosens you up. So that's what I do now. I talk to a lot of people. People ask me, what are you doing these days, Celia? I'm in the inspiration business. Good teachers are in the inspiration business, some media, scientists, some medical people. In the inspiration business, we actually want to, we want to think larger than our own actions. We want to think about legacy. We want to actually galvanize everybody's individual energy to become collective energy that could do something big. So that's the business I am, and I happen to do it through beautiful, gorgeous, exciting art. So that's me. You can ask questions later. Why? What does your mother think? What happened? Just by way of a wee case study, I just want to tell you a couple of the buildings that you probably know because you have lived and worked in Toronto. But so Artscape had been around for a few decades, but in the 2000s, my colleague Tim Jones and I built a number of other properties. This one predated me, but this was the Distillery District, which you probably know. You've been down there to see Soul Pepper or go to the Christmas market or whatever. Was a closed site in the 80s and 90s. And we used to sneak in through the fence and sort of poke around. And it was occasionally rented for a film shoot, but it was nothing. And you would have bought a condo in the Distillery area. Nobody would have gone anywhere. Well, really, that side of Jarvis, really. And somebody bought it and they started talking to Artscape and it was a creative placemaking arrangement. So we had a 20-year below market lease on about 60 units, and Soul Pepper and George Brown were building their space at the same time. And the idea was we would say yes and go in there and inhabit it and make it interesting, and they would attract the higher end galleries and the beautiful shops and the restaurants and all the rest of it. And so for 20 years, we had Tapestry New Opera in there and dance makers, beautiful dance company, Nightwood, a feminist theater, and then a whole lot of makers and retailers. And after 20 years, they kicked us out. Thank you very much. We've sold all our condos and everyone recognizes the distillery as a beautiful destination now. We don't have any need for you anymore. And believe me, we tried everything to get them to keep us, but they were done with us. So after that, we're like, oh, we should be in a different situation with a different landlord. That didn't work out. The barns, you've been to the Witchwood Barns, the farmers market, which is so gorgeous. The Stop Community Food Center, which has an amazing greenhouse there that grows food and teaches children about children who live in the city who may not know where food comes from, shows them where carrots grow and how to grow a cabbage. There's affordable housing rent geared to income housing for artists in this place. There are community groups, environmental groups, theater for young audiences. It's owned by the city. So we thought, okay, good. We have a more patient landlord. And Artscape, we raised all the money to pay for the renovation. They were old streetcar repair facilities filled with lead paint. If any of you were in remediation or environmental science, lead paint, asbestos, oil, you name it. But we turned it into the first Gold LEED certified heritage building in North America. There's geothermal, there was solar, there were all kind of features. At the time, 2008, when it opened, it was really quite something. People came from around the world to see this as a model of adaptive reuse of heritage buildings. I don't know if any of you were neighbors during that time. Forgive me if you were. They put up, some of them loved the idea of this. There was a lot of resistance from some very vocal neighbors about the idea about these wastrel artists moving into their neighborhood, or all these other people that might be attracted to the neighborhood and coming to, God forbid, a farmer's market, or you know, they just wanted it to stay the way it was, which was nothing, just a derelict park. And there was disputes about what a park should be. Maybe we should tear down these heritage buildings and just have grass so the kids can run around. So we kept a lot of grass, but we also kept the buildings. And I would say, although there were a few cranky people later, almost everybody, once it was opened and they realized what was being generated there in terms of community asset, they were on board. I think their houses also doubled in value during that time, but you know. We went into affordable ownership. We did affordable rental, but we also experimented in the Queen West area with affordable ownership, which is hard to do. But we ended up doing deals with developers to get space that we didn't pay full price for. And then we're able to offer artists a no payment second mortgage. So they paid 3/4 of the market value of their unit. We put in the second mortgage. So when they sold it, we participated in the appreciation of the value of the unit, and we could pass that on to the next buyer. There were 48 affordable ownership units in this building. It's one of the ones that was sacrificed when Artscape went bankrupt, that those units won't stay affordable. And when the people that are in them now sell them, that second mortgage will be owned by the bank and will be liquidated, and they'll be sold at market. So that's bitter. And this is Queen West near the Drake and the Gladstone, where there had been so many artists' warehouses that were torn down when all those buildings were built. Artscape Young Place was an old school on Shaw Street between Dundas and Queen near Trinity Bellwoods, a 100-year-old school. This TDSB had owned it. It's amazing how much water damage can do when you don't take care of your building. And we got in there, we bought it from them for not very much. And we thought it was about a $10 million project. It was a $22 million project because the water damage, it turned out all of the vertical steel in the whole building were completely corroded. So everything had to be replaced in the whole building. And yet it was controlled by Heritage, so it had to look the same, but it had to be completely rebuilt basically from the inside out. We weren't allowed to do residential. It was in the middle of a residential community, and the residents wanted it to be a community center the way it had been their school, and they wanted it to remain a community space. So we ended up doing a commercial condominium, and artists were able to buy their units or rent their units from Artscape and do public-facing programs. It also has been taken over by the bank. Luminato is a tenant in there, and I'm about to get booted out, and I'll have to go find a market space. So that is frustrating. And in every one of these projects, we were trying to figure out how to forestall this kind of bad news. And in other cases, we were able to do that. The last one I'll say is Daniel Spectrum, which is in Regent Park. Maybe you've been to events there. There are a lot of fundraising events that happen in the big theater there, the Ada Slate Hall. There's 7 fantastic nonprofits that work upstairs, tons of community programs, lots of mentorship programs for kids. And in this one, when they did the whole redevelopment of Regent Park, Toronto Community Housing owns all the land. So they will always own the land. And we built this building that sits on top of the land in a joint venture between Toronto Community Housing, Daniels Corporation, who were doing the development, Artscape, and the community, and set it up as a separate entity to control it. So it's protected going forward. So in thinking about, and there were many other projects that we worked on, and thinking about how do you save space? You accept that the city is going to change. You accept that buildings will be torn down, other ones will be built. How do you still make space for community and for creativity, for children, for seniors? How do you still make our streets livable? How do you make living rooms that we can all go into and feel comfortable, that are public facing? How do you try to hold on to affordability, residential and commercial? And this was a brand new building, beautiful LEED certified building designed by Diamond Schmidt. And it will always be that because it's actually held in trust for the community. So we learned a thing or two. Artscape did I left in 2016. They did other projects. They got a little over leveraged. The pandemic came. Nobody paid rent for a couple of years. You couldn't do all the fancy business that they'd been doing in the event spaces. They came back. The banks doubled all the interest rates on all the debt. And TD called the loans last summer. And they are now in receivership. So some of the assets will still be held, like Witchwood Barns, Daniel Spectrum. Some of them will stay because the city's involved, they'll stay, but other ones will just float to market. So I just put it out there as an example of, we worked with so many developers and philanthropists and the city and others to try to figure out this puzzle, and it's not done yet. And I find it frustrating that we collectively let an organization go under, for want, honestly, of maybe, I don't know, maybe $6 or $7 million. We could have, and I talked to the federal government, the provincial government, the city about it, like, really? Lost hundreds of units of affordable housing and hundreds of thousands of square feet of affordable workspace for that. It seems like it doesn't make sense to me, as all the headlines are about affordability. At the same time we were doing this, we were cataloging it all, and we were consulting around the world. We had a whole consulting practice, Europe, the UK, Australia, the States, on creative placemaking. We won all kinds of awards. We ran a university course out of Simon Fraser that people around the world subscribed to. We ran it for about 5 years, I think, the university training. So this idea of creative placemaking is still alive and well out there, and I hope people aren't discouraged by what happened. So, but now, now I'm trying to figure out, how do I actually work not within buildings, which I still love buildings, and I still think they're a great tool. How do I actually spread the idea of what we're trying to do, that this is a creative city and there's space for all of us to participate in creativity and in innovation and in energy sharing across the whole city region? And I serve now the GTA, so Brampton and Mississauga and Markham, Scarborough, North York, Toronto. We have a festival that runs in the month of June, and we try to hub downtown because that's where most of the facilities are, but we'll be at Scarborough Town Center this year. We'll be in Mississauga, Brampton. Part of it is because I'm serving the 8 million people that live in this region. It's also because the provincial government, we don't vote them in from the 416. They get voted in from the 905. So I need to show up in the 905 if I'd like to sustain my provincial funding. So heaven knows what's going to happen if Ottawa changes, because we never vote in who's going to be in government in Ottawa. So, on balance. So that's another story. But again, Luminato, international multidisciplinary arts festival, firmly rooted in Toronto, welcoming the world, both as a tourist attraction and as to attract artists from around the world to bring their work here. Started after SARS, founded by a couple of business people, David Pico and Tony Galliano. If you were in Toronto during SARS, the streets were empty, the theaters were empty. We were kind of singled out as one of a couple places in the world that seemed to be kind of have this brand that we were not safe. My sister, who lives in Ottawa, wouldn't come and visit me during this. It wasn't as rampant as the world perceived it to be. So it was a big perception issue. They created Luminato as a way to get over that and rebuild the tourism market, and also rebuild our collective energy of getting back out again. So here we are almost 20 years later with a worldwide situation that's not dissimilar. We commission, present, produce, host great art. It's contemporary work. I would not be doing something that Stratford might be doing or Shaw might be doing. They do a beautiful job. I don't need to do that. You would see on our stages stuff you've never seen before. weird combinations of dance and theater with some music thrown in, or some visual art in a park that actually resembles theater, or food, architecture, fashion. I kind of think I can do whatever I like, actually. That's what multidisciplinary means. So you'll see what happens in the next couple of years as we kind of innovate in this strange new world. And, well, what do they want now? Okay, we'll try that. We do this because we think we're connectors and in the inspiration business. We employ a ton of artists locally and international artists whom we bring here. We commission new work, often with other great groups around the world. We're talking to the Tate Modern right now. We're talking to the Sydney Festival. We're talking to festivals and creators all around the world, because it's easier if you do it together. It's more affordable. To do all of this, I recently hired a new artistic director. And our last artistic director left last summer, and we did a big search, and I was very open to whether I hired someone from here or elsewhere and what their background was. And I ended up hiring the woman who is currently the artistic director of the Sydney Festival in Australia, which is like the most phenomenal, like really the best city-based arts festival in the world. They've been around for 50 years. They absolutely nail this objective to promote your city by welcoming the world to it and welcoming the world's artists to co-create with your own. If it works, I'm going to show you a little video of her. Her name is Olivia Ansel. Let's just see if this works. If it doesn't work, I'll just act it out. But what do you think? No, that's not going to be good, though, because that's just see here.
That's how you want.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if we get volume. We'll see. Okay. We searched all around the world, Toronto, across the country, in almost every continent.
I work in the arts because creativity has the power to challenge and inspire people. My name is Olivia Ansel, and I am so excited and deeply honoured to be appointed the Artistic Director of Luminato.
When we met Olivia, we knew we had found our one. She is so well versed in what festivals can do for a city. Olivia will bring a wealth of experiences to Toronto, to our arts and culture sector, to the audiences here. She's an international player.
I think that arts festivals play a really important role to make sure that they ignite culture and collaborate deeply with artists so we can retain that sense of cool in places that we live and work.
Luminato is an international multidisciplinary arts festival. Part of what we do is connect people, to remind us that we have more in common than we have in difference.
What I envisage over the next few years for Luminato is to be known as that experiential international arts festival with a bold personality and an appetite for taking risks. I think Toronto is this exciting hub, cosmopolitan, progressive, multilingual city of rivers, a confluence of culture and environment. So many diverse stories meander through the city, and I'm so excited that we get to tell all of those stories.
We're going to commingle with beautiful, talented, terrific people from around the world.
I'm really looking forward to working with the dynamic team at Luminato, along with so many inspiring artists, as well as partners that make the city hum. Together, we will illuminate the city and signal the start of summer.
Olivia, Toronto can't wait to meet you. Hey, there you go. Now, how do I get out of this? No, we don't want to see that. No, we don't want to see that at all.
I'm not quite sure how we're going to get out of that.
Okay, we're going to press this little thing down here. And then we're going to close this.
Yeah.
You do it.
I just want to be back here.
Yeah. Okay, so
and I just want to line fleeting money. There you are.
Okay. And if those on Zoom can't see us now, please alert Margaret. We're good? We still okay, Margaret? We're good?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I met Olivia on a phone call. You know, when you do these searches, you hire a firm, they find you hundreds of people, and you go, oh my God, who are these people? And I've got to get them to, if they're not from here, to move here. So at his search committee, and we got about 15 finalists, and we hadn't interviewed them yet. And I said, I'm just going to actually have a little Zoom call with each of them to see if they actually would consider moving here and if they could fall in love with me, because if they can't, then, you know, we won't bother doing the interview. So I did my 15, and it was fabulous. And I talked to wonderful people all over the place. There was a fabulous woman working in Abu Dhabi. And at the end of it, I'm like, there's no way you're coming to Toronto. Like, they have so much money there to put into the arts and culture. Like, really enjoy yourself. I'll come and see your festival sometime, but you're not coming here. Another lovely guy in Buenos Aires, beautiful guy, really interested in how his work was really in fact impacting his city. And the more we talked about it, the more I was like, you're in love with your city. You're not leaving your city. You're not coming to me. So again, I'll see you in New York sometime, or maybe I'll come to you. I talked to Olivia. We had a great talk. We went through the whole process. And at the end of it, my search committee, and it was all on Zoom, my search committee said, you got to go get her. I'm like, okay, but she lives in Australia. But I knew she was in Europe. So this is if you need this, it's a great seductive move. I called her on a Thursday morning and said, so where are you going to be on Saturday afternoon? I knew she was in the Northern Hemisphere. She said, oh, I'll be in London seeing some shows. I went, okay, do you have a couple hours? Because I think I'll come and see you. So I got on a flight on Friday night, flew all night, dealt with Heathrow, the trains, blah, blah, blah. We were seeing a show at 2:30 together. She said, I've got an extra ticket. Come and see the show with me. I get there at 2:27. The show starts at 2:30. There's no one in the lobby of the theater. The Bridge Theater, if you've been there yet, it's a gorgeous new theater built with private money in London, right by London Bridge. I walk in, there's no one in the lobby. They're all in getting ready to see Guys and Dolls, which was an incredible, very fancy production. I walk in there, and the only one in the lobby is Olivia, with the light sort of like shining on her. I was just doing a demonstration story, Zoom people, shining on her. And we ran towards each other. Anyway, we had a great 22 hours in London, saw a couple of shows, had a couple of drinks, and did the deal. And she's going to move herself and her family to Toronto. She has to finish their festival next January. They do 4 festivals, and then they throw out their artistic directors. So she has one more to do next January. And she's doing our first festival in 25. So we've already got this one covered. But this is a woman, she's doing their festival, she's doing our festival, and she's expecting twins in April. So, I know, I know. I tried not to shriek when she said that to me. Anyway, give something to a busy person. So I'm very excited she's coming. She's a dancer by training. She's been a producer for many years. She's an international phenom. She's a racehorse, really. And in the international arts fields, she's a really well-known and respected person who has relationships all around the world. So hence, we can talk about doing great collaborations with the great arts orgs and artists from around the world. So I'm very excited about what we'll bring to Toronto. She's contracted for the next 5 years. So we have a good amount of time to bring extraordinary things here and then work with artists here to really, and now it doesn't move anymore, to really, I can do it. I can do it. I'm learning. To really set the place on fire. Just to give you some stats about the size we are. The festival last year, we had about 443. I always round up to 500, but whatever. People in person participating all across the city region. And then there were another couple 100,000 people who participated on live TikTok stuff that we did. I don't know if any of you are TikTok fans, but I had my team, who are juveniles in this area, broadcasting live from these outside events. And we had like 200,000 people on live TikTok calling in to watch what she was saying about what we were doing. Like, so interesting to think about, like, as you think about the future and arts experiences, it may not resemble what we're all used to. There may be other ways to consume this. And I think you have to be open to that and figure that out. Of course, I hope that those people then get converted and come and see us in person, but I don't know, maybe they won't. Almost, just a bit more than half under the age of 45, good idea. A lot of diversity in our audience, which is great. As I say, we employ a lot of artists. We worked with over 100 different community partners last year. which was amazing. Everyone from Médecins Sans Frontières, War Child, to the Michael Jean Foundation, to puppet companies, to different arts groups. And we also toured, we commissioned Ed Bertinsky, whom you may know as the acclaimed Canadian photographer. We commissioned him to make a film 2 years ago, which we presented on all of the video screens at Yonge Dundas Square 2 years ago. 22 screens owned by 7 different companies who make millions of dollars in selling advertising on those screens and convincing them to give it over to us on a weekend so we could do a takeover and co-op all 7 different operating systems to run one film experience with an original commissioned score. Like huge. And if I had to do it again, I would have gotten to give me billboards across the whole region. So at the same time, wherever you were, you would have seen a glimpse of Ed's work, which I think we might still do that in the future. I was just in London last week because the film that we commissioned is part of a huge retrospective of Ed's work at the Saatchi Gallery in London. 100 of his huge prints, that show the devastation. I know, the devastation of what we've done to the world without judging, just witnessing. 15 huge, big murals, and then our film in the middle of it. And just this morning, the Financial Times, if you look it up, did an amazing review of his work, really acclaimed. So I love that story, and I love that our work is going around the world with Ed. These are just some images of what we did last year. The one of the puppet with the butterflies around her, that was Amal. We did Walk with Amal, which you may have heard of. She was a 12-foot tall puppet made by the company, the Handspring Puppet Company in South Africa, that made War Horse. If you saw that show several years ago with those horses, and when the horses died, you cried, even though you knew it was a puppet and you could see the puppeteers. It was so powerful. Well, Amal was this 12-foot tall puppet, a 10-year-old Syrian girl, refugee. The project started in a refugee camp on the border of Turkey and Syria, and she's looking for her mother. And she walked across in 21, 22, she walked across Europe, and artists everywhere welcomed her to their communities and did things with her. She came to Toronto. We were in 15 different communities, Brampton, Scarborough, downtown, waterfront, all over the place, in all these partnerships, really representing the situation of children in a hopeful and as a potential, not as a pity piece, but as a potential of human potential of what people could become if given the right situation, and really just drawing attention to the whole refugee plight and migration around the world. So really powerful theater piece, but also connected to so many people. So many people, when we talked to them about supporting it, had family experience of dislocation, either themselves or their parents or their grandparents or their ancestors. We also did an amazing music festival at David Pico Square downtown beside Roy Thompson Hall. We're going to do it again this year and go for the whole time. Just lots of interesting work. That's Amal walking at City Hall. We had this wonderful Indigenous welcome, and we had Adrian Clarkson, Michael Jean, Elizabeth Dowdswell, and Elder Duke Redbird all welcome her. And the women were her honorary grandmothers welcoming her to our city. We did let some politicians get a little bit of the glory, but not too much, because it was actually about her. She left us after June, and this fall she walked across America. She'd been in New York the year before, but she walked from Boston to San Diego, 35 cities. Incredible journey. And then she walked across at Tijuana and walked through Mexico. So I just think that gives me shivers. Like, that's a powerful use of art and creativity to actually talk about what's going on in the world. And you can't help but be moved by this puppet. She brings you to tears. That's the end of that. So I'm just looking ahead to this June. I haven't announced it yet, but I'll give you a couple of hints about what we're doing. We're announcing it in April. We will, again, have lots of outdoor things, lots of things people can participate in for free. We'll have extensive youth programs. We're working with the TDSB. We're working with various foundations who are supporting work in Scarborough and Etobicoke and North York to inspire kids using arts and creativity. we are bringing in more international work than we have in the past couple of years for obvious reasons. There was a pandemic, but we're also collaborating with Soul Pepper and other local organizations. And I think on balance, it's going to be just a wonderful, re-celebration of the city. Some of the things that we tried to do this year, which we have not yet done, but hold on to your hats, next year we'll get there. I want to highlight the CN Tower. I think it's a mid-century modern icon that we don't see anymore. We might do some gimmicks off it this year. There's a group that does, they're called the 360 All-Stars. They were created in Australia and they've been touring the world. They do this amazing stuff with basketballs and with BMX bikes and with skateboards and with, I don't even really know what this is. They call it like I don't know, like the hoop circle or something. It sounds like a nightmare to me. I think you're in the hoop circle as you're doing the tricks. It's amazing. They'll do workshops with kids, but it's also very, very entertaining. It's circus, street circus. So we're thinking about, that horrible skywalk thing on the CN Tower. I'm sure you've all done that thing. We're thinking about getting those guys to do that somehow, which would be very fun and a great photo op. I think the CN Tower should be lit up. I think it should make a difference. If a certain number of us are gathering around the bottom of it, I'd like something different to happen on the tower. Like if they heat mapped our bodies being there, something different happens, I'd like to illuminate the cover of Rogers Center, the Sky Dome. Imagine if that was a screen and you could do visuals on that whole thing. Hugely expensive, but Rogers should do it with me. We talked to all the, during the pandemic, I talked to that, there are 8 companies that own 85% of downtown. 8. Yeah, 85%. So I talked to those 8 gentlemen who were the CEOs of those 8 companies during the pandemic and said, hey, what do you think? You guys own, collectively you own 85% of downtown and it's empty. And when we all come back, we need to actually bring up the heat. And, your tenants, their employees are not coming back. Your retail tenants in the Path and other places are in trouble. And so we've been working with Cadillac Fairview, with Oxford, with others, not at the level that I would like them to participate, but we have been working with them on how do we animate the downtown and make it someplace that it's fun to go back to work, not just on Tuesday and Wednesday. And in looking at the landscape of the city, you go, oh my gosh, there are all these buildings. What if we actually illuminated the landscape so that whether you were in Mississauga in your condo or in North York, you could actually see what was going on? And what if you had an app on your phone that if you did something different would happen down there? What if the art was, you've maybe seen the immersive art that if you go up to the screen, the butterflies all go, whoo, we know how to do that stuff. How do we actually do that on a city scale? Because I think it's cool. I don't think it's trite. I actually think it could be gorgeous. I mean, some of the designers working in these fields are amazing artists. But I also think it's about that it matters that you show up. Like the world is different because you showed up. I think it matters that you vote. I think it matters that you volunteer. I think it matters that you donate to things that matter to you. I think it matters that you take your body and go somewhere else other than your own little universe. I think it matters that you talk to people who are not in your family and your close friend group. I think, those kinds of actions change a city. And we have new people arriving in our city, net positive every year, coming from amazing places around the world with so many talents and so much creativity. Imagine if we could actually weave all of that together. This could really be a place for innovation and for new ideas, and a place where kids want to stay after they finish school, and things could be invented. So that's why I want the CN Tower to change colors if you show up, to actually remind you that it matters that you made the effort, put your shoes on, grabbed your umbrella, and left your house. So that's what I'm into. Oh my gosh, the politicians love this talk. They love it. They just don't actually really, change the funding requirements. And what I have said is if I was running the place, if I was running the city or the province or the country or the world, coming out of a pandemic, I'd be thinking about our collective energy, because apathy, and I don't really care where you are in the political spectrum. I'm not talking about that on the spectrum, but apathy will doom us. Whereas action, whatever the action is, taking action and being a participant we have the potential of maybe dealing with the enormous existential challenges that are facing us and facing our kids. So, so that's what I mean when I talk about being in the inspiration business. I don't want to leave on a down note, but I will say, Susan asked me to talk a little bit wider about the arts community. I chair the Toronto Arts Council as a volunteer. And the Arts Council hands out about $25 million a year from the city to arts organizations and artists, and through a whole peer review process. It really is a great organization. So I'm aware with what's going on the ground in the live arts and to some extent visual arts, not film or TV, or those guys will be fine. But the rest of it, it's really a problem. And some of the major organizations and some of the smaller ones that you love and have been supporting are really in jeopardy right now. The ones that audiences are still coming out to, and they're still able to fundraise, the costs have doubled. So they're kind of screwed. And audiences have not come back. And you can read about this across, well, not even just North America, it's the same around the world. Audiences have not come back to the same level they were before. We broke the habit. So we have to transform what we're offering. I just can't try harder. I need to transform. I need to offer different approaches to things, and I need to intervene. We're on the GO trains. We go on the subways. We're in the stations. Like, we try to go places where people are. Not everyone can do that if you're doing classical opera or, you know, some straight theater things. So it's really there'll be a sea change over the next couple of years. And I think some of the major organizations that we love will really struggle. And they're run by brilliant people who know what they're doing, and they do beautiful work, but it doesn't add up. And so that is a challenge. So I was saying this to someone for a podcast a little while ago, and they said, "Oh my God, but what can I do?" Well, you can vote. Do you know if the people you vote for are arts positive? Did you ask them what their platform is? Oh, I forgot about having that platform. You know, you should ask them. You should ask them. Do you volunteer? Do you contribute? Do you buy tickets? Do you donate? Do you show up? Do you buy? If you don't want to see it, fair enough. Buy tickets for someone else, and they can go see it. If you buy a couple of tickets or a subscription, why don't you buy 4 and bring guests every time to introduce people, maybe younger people who aren't familiar with the work or the art form? Can you spread the word about things? So in that vein, and I know we're all busy people, but oh my gosh, it's so fun. I mean, there's so many amazing things going on. Like, why wouldn't we do this? I asked my assistant, who's 28, to come up with 5 things that are happening this week in the city that we all might be interested in. So I looked at this and thought, oh, this is good. This isn't just for a 28-year-old, actually. I think these are things that we all might like to see, actually. The first one is a musical. It's an American musical, but the show that was produced by Crow's Theatre and Musical Stage has now been extended and extended and extended. And it's supposed to be, I've not seen it personally yet, but it's supposed to be fabulous. So go see it. Yeah, some endorsements. Okay, good. Okay, buy tickets for someone else to go see it, and the rest of you go see it. Really great. Wavelength is a local music festival that has been on for years and years and years. You can look them up, see if it's to your taste. If it's not to your taste, tell someone else about it. And we've actually asked them to program a bit of our music programming this year, so you'll see us later. The Inheritance is the show that's opening at Canadian Stage. Brendan Healy, who's their artistic director, is directing it. It's over 2 nights. So if you're into the marathon kind of things, which is a mind space, but can be fabulous. I'm going to see it next week, but it's sort of loosely based on Howard's End, but it's a contemporary, and it's an intergenerational story. So that should be amazing. Winter Stations, which I saw a week ago, it opened. It's along the beach, you know, in the East End. And they take each of the lifeguard stations and they get groups, some architecture students elsewhere, both from here and internationally. There's a whole competition. And they use the life station as the bones to do these wild things on them. And some of them I thought were very successful. So others were perplexing to me, but you know, I leave that to you to go and have a look, and you can have a walk on the beach too. So, and then the ballet has a beautiful triple bill program on later in March that you might go and see. And if you're talking to people who have limited means, they have a great last minute ticket opportunity as well. And I know it's on Sundays. I don't know if it's other days or not, but not all these things have to cost a fortune. So that's just what Sarah found for me. But you know, there are a million other things. It's a great city. I was talking to a donor recently who was saying, I think we're done, Celia, you know, I think we're done. And I'm like, no, you know, we've got to still stay involved in this stuff. And they said, oh, there's so much going on. I'm like, listen to you. Is that a bad thing? There's so much going on in the city, you can't possibly see all of it. That's okay. It's not just for you. It's for everybody else. So it's a good thing that there's too much to see. And I hope it doesn't all appeal to you. I hope it appeals to other people as well, right? So that's my thing. And I'm very excited about Olivia joining me. And we're going to do some really wild and crazy things. She has an idea about a sleepover at the top of the CN Tower. I'm like, great. I will not be doing that. But sure, I will hear about it and think, oh, what a cool city I live in that people are sleeping in the revolving thing at the top of she wants to do stuff on the water. They do a lot of, like, Sydney is a water city, so they have all these inflatable things. So she asked me, so what kind of creatures live in the lake? I'm like, oh my God. I don't want like a big inflatable catfish or something, or some pike, or I don't know. I've got to come up with a better idea for her than that. So anyway, just to have some fun and to take over the city in a different way, to see it differently, to use some buildings that you don't normally get to be inside and do some things inside them, which is fun, to capture some moments before those buildings are torn down, to do some things with buildings that were just built that we should invade and make them our space and not let them be private.